This week on Inside the Headset, we have a special episode in honor of International Women's Day. We spoke with Dartmouth College assistant football coach Callie Brownson. We discuss her background, how she went on to become the first full-time Division I female football coach, and she offers her advice to coaches. Let's get inside the headset with Coach Brownson. Hey, Coach Brownson, how you doing today? Thanks for hopping on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So to jump into the interview, we want to talk about you playing youth football. You had a great experience, but then when high school came around, you were told you were not able to play not once, but twice. Can you elaborate on that experience and how being told no when it comes to something you're passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I went into my freshman year. It was about a few weeks before school had started, and there's basically an orientation for everybody who wants to play a fall sport. So I had talked my dad into taking me up to meet with the football coaches and to express an interest in coming out for camp that year. And we went up to the school and met the high school coaches who would be the freshman coach and everybody throughout the program, and kind of got these blank faces of, we don't really know what to do. So I basically got passed on to the athletic director, who explained to me that it was going to be a really difficult process to be able to remove liability basically on the school for a girl to be on the team, that they could potentially pursue me being a kicker, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play. And, they said no, but instead of really saying no, they just told me it was going to be way too difficult. So that was a no. It was an obstacle that they placed ahead of me to basically discourage me from even trying. So I tried again a little bit later in my career, or my high school career, to play again going into my senior year. A new coach had come in, and he was actually one of my teachers. And I had him my junior year, and last week of school, I had been encouraged by a lot of my friends who were on the team to do it, to come out senior year. So it was the last day I had him in class, and I said, Coach, I'm going to try out next year. I want to play. I don't care if you ever put me on the field, but I'm going to be on the football team my senior year. And his response was along the lines of there would never be a female who was a part of his program. So that was the second time, and kind of, for me, I think in a way the second time I was a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and was a little bit more ready for a no, and maybe even expected a little bit, knowing him as well as I did. But the first time, it's tough. I had up to that point played mostly male sports. Everybody who was going to be on that freshman team I had been playing sports with since I was 5. They were all on board with me doing it. I had so much support from my peers. And then to meet that resistance, I think that was my first moment of really seeing the reality of the barriers in place for women in football, and that they existed. Up until that point, I hadn't really dealt with a lot of realities of girls can't do this and girls don't do this. And that was the first time where reality really hit me of, wait a second, there really is a culture out there that believes that girls don't belong on the field with boys as it pertains to football. So that was kind of my first brush with reality in regards to that. And I just remember being absolutely heartbroken by it.
So despite that experience and not being able to play in high school, you did find a way to get back in the game. So at the age of 19, you went on to play professionally for 8 years in the Women's Football Alliance and for the United States national team. What about the game of football that made you want to play professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. When I went through the whole process when I was in high school, I kind of figured my playing days were over at that point. At that point, women didn't play in high school, so they definitely didn't play in any levels in adulthood. So for me, I kind of, at that point, after graduating high school, thought, those days were over, and I was going to be a spectator, I was going to be a fan, for the rest of my life. And I was in my freshman year of college, 19, and a family friend had mentioned the local women's professional team in D.C., and so I did a lot of research, watched some YouTube videos, and was immediately like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is this hidden treasure of a world that I didn't even know existed. And so that opened the door for me. I went and tried out, and, the rest is history as it pertains to my career. But for me, that was kind of a big lesson in life of trusting the process and trusting, the ways and the directions life takes us. Had I been closed off, had I been resentful based off of my experience in high school and said, I'm done, I'm not doing it, football's over for me, et cetera. Had I not been more open-minded and really still believed in that passion that I had for the sport, I never would have taken that step. I never would have given it a chance. So for me, it was another opportunity to live out something that I thought about constantly, playing and being a part of football in some capacity. So it was another chance to live out my dream of playing football in some capacity in any way. So and then being able to play for the national team is indescribable, to not only get to represent your country internationally, but to do it in the sport that you love so much, and seeing other women from other countries speaking the universal language of football. That alone was a phenomenal opportunity.
So towards the end of your playing career, you finally got into coaching. You became a high school football coach, and you landed an internship with the New York Jets in 2017. So what was it about this up and down experience of playing football that made you want to coach?
Yeah, so my first taste of coaching, I had coached other sports through college, earlier on in my football career as well as in my collegiate career, softball and track and some other things. So I always loved coaching. I really enjoyed working with athletes, especially young athletes, where, I had such great experiences playing softball and just sports in general, being able to help younger kids basically have great experiences and learn a lot about themselves through sports, something I was immediately passionate about. I didn't think there was an avenue, much like with the playing in high school. It wasn't a conversation topic or really even a part of my brain that could wrap around a female coaching football, just because of my experiences and just the dialogue that was a part of society at that point. So when I ran into the football coach at the high school I was coaching softball at, and he brought it up, I heard you played women's football, you ever think about coaching? All of a sudden, it was like this merging of two things at the time that were my life. So I was playing, and then on top of that, I was coaching another sport, and it kind of fused the two together. I ended up helping out, and that was my first year coaching high school football that fall. And to me, it was like it didn't take long for me to understand that that's what I wanted to do. The sport that I love so much, and then being able to coach it and teach it and help these young athletes have positive experiences, much like football had given me. And football was continuing. At that point, I was in my mid-20s. Football was continuing to teach me so much about myself. I wanted to help them learn that as well. So merging from player and kind of figuring out that the coaching world was for me was kind of like a great epiphany to come across. And then moving into, my internship with the Jets, that was the next level. I had been at the high school level for a few years, and now it was, this is how we do it in the pros. And I was on the player personnel scouting side, but to be able to see that opened up another pocket of kind of this knowledge and growth pattern that I could have, this trajectory that I could have in my career. And these were things that a lot of women, if any, were being able to do. So it was even bigger. It was an even bigger stage to be on. So, all of that really resonated with me more, that I was exactly where I needed to be. And this world of coaching, this world of being involved in football at a high capacity was exactly where I belonged and what I needed to do.
Yeah, so now with having your foot in the door with coaching and being on that stage, like what you talked about, you moved on to participate in the Manning Passing Academy. How did you go from work in that camp to moving on to your next step and suddenly landing an internship with the Dartmouth football team?
So I basically went down some of the connections I had made through my time playing women's football. I got a phone call from a woman who I'd played with for a few years, and she was from the Louisiana area where the Manning Passing Academy is held in Thibodaux. And she basically said that the Manning Passing Academy had reached out to her and said they wanted to run their first ever camp for women and girls, and they wanted to staff the entire camp with female coaches. And so she gave me a call, asked me if I would be interested, and immediately I said, absolutely, no brainer. And so I didn't really know what to expect when I was going down. All I saw was an opportunity to give back to the game for young girls, an opportunity for there to be an all-female staff sponsored by the Manning Passing Academy. To me, it was about the moving the sport for females further. I had absolutely no idea who I would meet down there and what would transcribe from that. So I went down to the camp and, helped with some of the organizational facets of it, and kind of, just enjoyed myself and did what I love to do, and that was get on the field and coach and help people learn to love the game the way that I do. That's really what I did, and I brought the same energy and passion that I always do. And little did I know that watching all of that transcribed was Coach Buddy Stevens, who is, he's one of the people who puts on the Manning Passing Academy and is involved in its creation. And so I had no idea he was watching, but it was a lesson in the fact that, you're always on a job interview, whether you think so or not, and people are always watching who you are and your presence and what you bring to the table. And I had absolutely no idea that somebody was watching. So that's how I met Coach Stevens. He really liked, how I ran my drills. He liked the preparation that I did prior to the camp, and he liked the energy that I brought to the field, and it was something that really flagged him. I reached out to him to say thank you about a week after the camp, and he gave me a phone call a week later and said, this might sound crazy, but I'm working on something. How would you feel about coming up for an internship? And that was kind of how that transcribed, and he really threw the whole thing together really quickly with the help of a lot of other people in the building. But it really all just started from going down to a camp that I was super excited about and just doing a good job doing the thing that I love the most, and it really caught his eye.
I love that. So you talked about when you were at the Passing Academy that everything you do is a job interview. So now you have this 2-week interview, just 2 weeks to prove yourself to Coach Stevens and basically the Dartmouth football team in general. So what were some of those daily responsibilities that you had, and what did you do to show Coach Stevens that he should hire you full-time?
For sure. So, again, I thought this was just an internship that had a hard stop at 2 weeks. To my knowledge, that you're going into training camp. These colleges and these universities, these big schools already have their staffs in place. At that point, this is the staff that's going to take them through the season. So for me, this was an internship, much like what I did with the Jets. I was with the Jets for training camp, and there's a hard stop on the internship. It's basically having more hands on deck for the time and the demand that you need in that time period. So to me, it was a hard stop. So I came into it with the mentality of I'm going to do everything I can to be a sponge. I'm going to do everything I can to get my hands on everything that I can to learn and grow and come out of this experience with a more applicable experience, basically. So my duties were, I was here with another woman, and ideally Coach laid it out for us in the sense that you can get out of it whatever you want. You can shadow, you can observe for drills, whatever you want to take home. For me, it was about getting my hands dirty. So I immediately got with the offensive coaches and asked, what can I do? How can I help with practice setup? How can I help with drill setup? How can I help with film? How can I help with playbook installs? How can I help with all this stuff? And so that's what it was. I would come in the morning. They would have, a list of tasks, whether it be data entry for film from practice the day before, prepping different drills, getting the practice schedule ready, making sure depth charts were up to date, making sure substitution lists were up to date, and then we go into practice. And then it's madness. You're running around like crazy, assisting in any possible way you can. After practice, coming back, the film gets uploaded by our video department, and then you get data entry, and you're going in and you're making sure all that's good to go so that when the players and the coaches watch film in meetings, they know what they're looking at. So my duties were right off the bat 100 miles an hour, but that's because that's what I wanted and that's what I requested. I asked to come in and go 100 miles an hour so that I could learn and see how our program operates and see if I could keep up. To be honest, a big part of it was to be able to gauge, is this a world that I can actually operate in? So that was a big part of me wanting to delve in head first.
So at this point, you received your full-time position, which makes you the first female collegiate football coach. So I have a quote here after you received that job at Dartmouth. It has you saying, "There are a ton of times where I was like, man, is this even possible? And not that I don't have what it takes to get it done, but is anyone going to open this door? Because I'm knocking pretty hard. A lot of times when you're doing something that people don't see often, you get a lot of no's and a lot of shut doors and a lot of you're not a good fit. But eventually you get someone like Coach Stevens who comes around." So going off of that quote, how has Buddy Stevens and his players and staff at Dartmouth helped you feel welcome and appreciated as that first female football coach, and honestly, just gender aside, just a football coach in general?
I was really lucky to come into the program that I did because, Dartmouth recruits a very special player. Obviously, we're an Ivy League institution, so these are very intelligent young men. They're playing at the highest level of football, Division I, so they're very athletic. But a big part of our recruiting process is we really look for character. We really look for people who embody what Dartmouth stands for and what Dartmouth football stands for. So I walked into a program with a group of young men and then a staff with the coaches that are all about integrity and character. So I never felt isolated. No matter how much the headline was read at first, I never felt different. I was treated by the players and treated by the staff as another coach on the staff. And that was such a big part of why it was successful. It wasn't this isolated incident. It was, oh, yeah, that's cool, that's great, but we brought you here because we wanted you here and because of the work that you're willing to put in and how you're willing to make the program better. And I reiterated that through, the first couple weeks of being hired. This is cool and that's great and that's a big buzzword and you're going to hear a lot of people talking about it. But at the end of the day, I'm here to make you better. I'm here to make the team better. I'm here to make the staff better. I'm here to make every individual player I get to interact with better. And once people realize that that's the real reason you're there, it changes the dynamic. There's trust, there's fluidity, and everybody is on the same page. The rest of it doesn't matter after that. And that's the part that you have to get. We as females entering the field have to understand, don't be so overwhelmed with I'm the only female in the room. Because although that may be fact, it doesn't matter if you can provide the value that you came there to do. And once the coaches understood, and I had solidified that with them in my internship and training camp, that I was there to work. I was there to make the program better in any way that I could, and I was there to make, I was there to help us win games. How big or little of an impact I could do that was to be determined, but I was going to do it. And once you do that, everybody welcomes you. Everybody appreciates you. So that's the big thing. I mean, people want to win. People want to be successful. And at the end of the day, if you can prove that you can get them there, they don't care who you are. They really don't.
Definitely. So when it comes to recruiting, even for me with being a collegiate athlete, I had those male coaches that told us, and I'm sure many other, that they're going to be their father figure while they're on campus. So as being a female and working in a sport dominated by males, what are you bringing to the table that separates you from this?
I think naturally you get that female instinct of you can kind of tell when things are bugging the guys a little bit more, and some of them feel a little bit more open coming to talk to you about stuff than they would maybe going to some of the male coaches. But, to be honest, I'm here to help them in any capacity that I can, and they know this. I've been vocal about it. If it's what's going on in their head, I'm here. If it's something physical, if it's weight room stuff, it's so forth, anything that I can help with, I'm here to help them with. And I think the coaching staff, as a general, male or female, does a good job with that. But I think, players tend to naturally, we as people tend to naturally see strengths in different capacities. So there are times where they're a little bit more willing to come talk to me about issues, non-football related or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, all I try to initiate with them is what I can help them with is anything that's going to make them better, And a lot of times I'm stressed with finals. I just need to vent. Sometimes that's, I don't know what I did wrong on this play. I've been watching film from last season. Can you, whatever it may be, I'm here to help them with. And I think, like I said, our coaching staff does a good job of that in general. But, sometimes just being the female, they feel a little bit more open to maybe talk and explore some of those things with you a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So like what you've been talking about this whole time is, yeah, you're the first, but you want to be known as the first of many. So one way for the past 3 years, the NFL has been holding the Women's Careers in Football Forum. How has this forum helped you and your career? And how do you see it helping the careers of other women who aspire to be the first of many and aspire to work in football?
Yeah, so the basis of the forum is there's really, really big proponents and two really big outcomes that come of it. And one is it's an educational resource. So it's the opportunity to get in front of NFL GMs, NFL head coaches of college, directors of player personnel for the NFL, recruiting coordinators for college, directors of football operations for the NFL, big people who are decision makers who ultimately eventually want to hire women and want to do it the right way. And these people are giving educational situations to these women, such as myself, of what does your resume need to look like? What are some of the things you can do from where you stand right now to getting to that end point to be a candidate whose resume is appealing to a person in a hiring position? Once you get to that point, what are some of the things that you can say? What are the things you can expand onto them to build value and establish and make these people say, could care less if she's a woman, I need her here, and that's basically the educational aspect is, what do I need to do? How do I stand out? How do I become a credible candidate? How do I get to that point from where I stand now? And then the other part of it is a networking opportunity. You're getting in front of these people. You have an opportunity to impress them. You have an opportunity to say, here's what I've done in the past. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'd like to do. I know I can build value where you are. So it's twofold. And I was able to gain both aspects out of it. I was able to network with a lot of people. It's part of the reason I got in front of the Jet previous because of the first year at the Forum. And then it's another reason why I was able to build off of that experience after the second year. But I also used a lot of the education that I received. What are some of the things I can say in an interview that make me an appealing candidate? What are some of the things I need to work on to be able to compete with some male counterparts who are applying for these positions? So it's twofold. And I think what the Forum's doing, especially after being able to, me and Coach Stevens actually got to lead a coaching breakout session at the third year's, and seeing some of the women who are participating and learning, it's a huge launching board. These are networking opportunities and educational opportunities that you can't just Google and find. You can't just find from a LinkedIn connection. These are face-to-face opportunities to look at an NFL general manager and say, I want to be in a player personnel department. I want to do this. How do I do it? And it's going to keep opening those doors, because what it also does on the other side, not just what the women are getting out of it, but these NFL executives and these decision makers are able to see, wow, there are a ton of women working their butts off every day to be qualified candidates to get in the NFL. They're out there. I have to search for it, but I don't have to search far. There are a lot of women who want to get here. And that's huge to be able to say, because a lot of times it's, well, where are the female candidates? Well, they're right here, and they're ready to go, and they want to learn, and they want to meet you, and they want to pull all the information they can from you to be that person who, when their resume slides across your desk, you're like, get her here. How do we get her here?
So touching on that last point you just said, I think being a female who's around sports, we get what's the advice for women, how can you get there and everything. But I want you, as someone who is there and a lot of people are looking up to talk about what advice do you have for those male coaches when it comes to hiring those female coaches and recruiting female players?
Right. So a big part of it is being open-minded. The game of football is evolving, and these male coaches see it every day, and they make decisions every day based off of how the game is evolving in terms of the game's faster, more teams run these games. The decisions that are made every day to evolve with the game of football by male coaches it's phenomenal. It happens all the time. This is just another component of that. This is just another way the game is adapting. And if you're open to all these other ways of changing the game and changing with the game, you have to be willing to do all of it. So be open-minded. Give the opportunity for a woman to come in and explain what she can do for your program. Don't just shut it off because you think, based off of everything and the dialogue that it's been in the football culture for so long, that it's impossible. Be open-minded to it, because you'd be very surprised what lies on the other end of it. And the other thing is, when it happens, if you do take that jump, really invest in it. Foster and grow that opportunity, because there's a chance that they're a little intimidated at first when they come in. So understand, that you have to really invest in that resource as well once you've been able to make the decision to adapt and bring somebody like that in. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for every program. We were kind of a guinea pig here at Dartmouth, and I know a lot of coaches and a lot of programs were waiting to see how it turned out. And I'm here for another year at least, and we went 9-1. We were 15th in the country, and I could rattle off stats for you all day as to us being successful. And is that a direct correlation to me? No. But what it is look at the fact that it didn't change anything. It didn't make us a weaker program. It didn't make us a softer program. It didn't change the dynamic of our program. There were no issues. In fact, there was added value and added benefit. So to me, it's look at the history of it. Look at the fact that it can happen. It can be possible. You can be successful. It doesn't have to change the culture. It doesn't have to change everything that you think your program is composed of just by bringing in a female.
Definitely. That's great. Just wrapping up this podcast, I wanted to thank you, Coach Brownson, personally for joining us and giving the Inside the Headset podcast a little bit of a different spin. But we appreciate it here at the AFCA, and I wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity to throw out your Twitter, your email, any other contact that you're willing to give out for listeners to reach out to you.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at CalBrown17. That's at CalBrown17. On Instagram under the same. And then my email, if you go on the Dartmouth football website and look under coaches, my email is listed right there. I love hearing from people and being able to help and assist and just ultimately just meeting people who love the game like I do and who are invested in it as well. It's always encouraging to me, so I encourage anybody to reach out at any time.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure to link all that in our show notes. And we all just wanted to thank you again, Coach Brownson, for joining us this week.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you heard anything on today's podcast that you'd like to find more information on, check out the show notes below or over at afcapodcast.com. We will have the links listed there and any other info you may have not had